All right, so let's talk about some of the gear that you need, and we'll start this off by just kind of the places you can find gear. The first place I would always check is something like Craigslist or even eBay or your local Play It Again Sports or swap meets. Like, you can find a lot of stuff super, super cheap at those kinds of places. Now, believe it or not, there's places like Target that actually have decent gear. Even when we're talking about dumbbells or kettlebells, they have some decent things like that. Another place that I've found is Ross. Ross or Marshalls will randomly have some gear that you can use for this. The other places that you can find are more specialty sites like Rogue. There's one called Titan. There's a company called Rage. There's a company called Again Faster. And all of these sites kind of fall into different tiers of pricing. We'll offer some links below for places that you can find slightly cheaper gear online and slightly more expensive. Understand that when you buy cheaper gear, generally the reason it's cheaper is because it doesn't last quite as long, or there's something a little bit wonky with where it's coming from, whether it's imported or whether it's not quite built the same way. And that's what you're gonna see with cheaper or more expensive gear. But as long as it gets the job done, that's kind of what we're looking for. Enough about where to pick up gear. Let's talk about the different gear that we need. And we'll start with just our entry level and least amount of gear, which is going to be our minimalist tier. So the minimalist, all we need is a jump rope and a set of dumbbells. Now, jump rope, you can really use any jump rope that you want. There's everything from cloth jump ropes to beaded jump ropes to wire cables to rubber cables. It's totally up to you and your comfort level. Generally, I would personally like a wire cable. The wire cable is light, but it has enough mass and weight in it to move. So it's not so light that it gets caught by the wind, so it can kind of turn over on its own. I love this company. This company is called RPM, and they have a jump rope that's like this. It's a wire cable with a little bearing in the handle there. It's wonderful. Do you need this? Absolutely not. We just need a jump rope, but kind of try a few out, see what makes the most sense to you, see what fits in your price range and what you're looking for, and get that one. Next thing we need for this basic tier is going to be a set of dumbbells. And that we have down here, a hex head dumbbell, and there's a number of different ones that you can get. You can get rubber headed ones like this. You can get rubber coated ones, which means there's metal inside of it. You can get just kind of the classic metal dumbbells that you'll find all over there. You can get round ones. You can get solid rubber ones. There's all kinds of stuff here, but just for my sake, I actually far prefer a rubber hex-headed dumbbell. And again, you can pick these up in a number of different places, but this for me is the best for running into your shoulder or dropping on the ground. They're pretty hardy. There's nothing special about higher level brands or lower level brands really with this. The only thing that you'll see with like really low level brands is the heads might twist off and you'll have to super glue them back. But that's it. Just a set of dumbbells and a jump rope. That's for our minimalist tier. We're gonna add a box for box jumps and any box work. We're gonna add a pull-up bar, and we're going to add a medicine ball. So a box, we can just kind of turn over here. This is a box. This is a wooden box. If you drop it down on its side, you can get 20 inches. If you click it up on this other side, you can get 24 inches. These are fantastic. The only problem with these is they take up space. They tend to be slightly more expensive. And if you fall and hit your shin on the side of a metal box, it really hurts. But it is really 3 boxes in one. It's a fantastic way to go if you have the space, if you have the finances for it. There's also metal boxes and a bunch of other different ones you can get in there. But this is kind of what I prefer, is one of these wooden boxes if you can swing it. The other thing we have here is gonna be this pull-up bar. Adding a pull-up bar allows for a lot of different things that we can do, hanging rings from it, hanging bands from it, doing pull-ups from it, all kinds of fun stuff. This is a wall-mounted pull-up system. It basically extends off the wall just enough to kind of get good pull-ups done, and you can do a little bit of a kip in here, nothing too big because we got a shorter arm in it. A number of different companies make this kind, but they also can anchor to the roof. You just gotta make sure you mount them in studs. There's also freestanding pull-up bars. You can use those as well. They just aren't always as stable and they require a little bit more floor space. This kind of way kind of brings it up off the floor and helps you out there. So I personally like a wall-mounted system. It tends to be pretty efficient to use for that. And the last thing we added there was a medicine ball. And a medicine ball, I did a fun DIY on how to not make a medicine ball DIY style. and I suggested buying one at the end of that. Medicine balls are pretty clutch when it comes to doing things like wall ball, and you want one that's not gonna be lopsided. If you buy a really cheap medicine ball, one that's not the hard ones, but if you buy a cheap soft medicine ball, it may have sand kind of in it and not the greatest covering around the sand, so the sand can shift around or it can start to spray through the holes, and that's what you're gonna see with the cheaper medicine balls. Two companies that I've seen do a really good job of making a medicine ball that doesn't do all that. One is Dynamax. They're the original creators of this type of medicine ball, and Rage is the other one. Those look like this, and these kind of guys here are stitched. They have the different panels. They hold the weight well, and you can kind of throw it around. They're not really made for slamming on the ground, but I suggest picking up one of these guys. Rage tends to be slightly less expensive than Dynamax. So that takes care of our minimalist and our mainstream tiers, and we're gonna move to the enthusiast tier where we start to bring in a few other pieces of gear. Enthusiast, you're pumped. You're buying all the gear. So here's what we're gonna add to this. We're gonna add a kettlebell, we're gonna add rings, and we're gonna add a rower, and we're gonna add a barbell. Makes for quite a bit more variance, and these things are fun to have, but again, they're not necessary in order to get fit, but they're fantastic to have. Here's what we got for a kettlebell. Kettlebell is this guy right here. It's pretty much a ball of weight with a handle on it. The only things you're gonna wanna look for when you buy a kettlebell is making sure that the grip makes sense to you. And what I mean by that is you don't want it so thick that you can't really hold on to it. So find one that the width or the diameter is appropriate for your hands. Also, if you have bigger hands, you want to find one where this grip is wide enough to accommodate your hands. So if you get one that's really, really narrow, it's gonna rub on those pinkies when you do any sort of higher amount of reps. So find one that's wide enough there to accommodate your big hands. And that's pretty much it. There's a bunch of different variations of the kettlebell that you can go out and look and find, but that's all we're looking for. Make sure it fits your hands. Next thing we have is a rower. And in reality, there's only really one kind of rower. It's a Concept 2. This is a Concept 2 rower. It's made to mimic on-water rowing. There are a couple other companies that make rowers, but you only really want this kind. Not specifically the blue one, but you want a Concept 2. It feels the best, it works the best, they last forever. They're just fantastic devices. So if you're out there looking for a rower, you know, cruise those internet sites that are like the Craigslists and the eBays, find the local stuff, see if you can find someone getting rid of one of these, because people will buy these and then they'll have them for a bit. They are more expensive, but hey, you're an enthusiast, get after it. Just get yourself a Concept 2. That's what you're gonna look for in the rower. Next thing we have here is going to be a barbell. Barbell, we don't need anything special. You just need to get a barbell that spins. You want to make sure it doesn't stick, it's not frozen. Generally, you're going to want what's called a bushing bar rather than a bearing bar. Bushing is what's inside here versus a bearing. Bearing tends to spin a bit faster. They also tend to be more expensive, and they also tend to be a little bit more fragile. So if you get a bearing bar, the likelihood of it breaking after dropping is a little bit higher. The other thing I would say is find a knurling, which is this little part here that's not super aggressive, unless you like that. If you grab it and it feels like it's gonna cut your hand open, imagine if you're doing a whole bunch of reps in a row. It might be easy to hold on to, but if it's really, really, really aggressive here, it's gonna tear open your hand. And if it's really, really smooth here, think about what your sweaty hands are gonna do mid-workout if you can't hold on to it. You wanna find that happy medium. That's slightly different for every person. Another thing is I would say, grab one that doesn't have this rough part in the middle of the bar. If you have that, then when it hits you in the throat, it's not gonna feel super good. So up to you. If you really wanna do that, do it, but I would suggest against it. Lastly, we have in this category is going to be rings. All I'm gonna suggest with the rings is a wood ring. There are metal rings, there's plastic rings, there's a ceramic ring. Don't get those, just get a wood ring. They feel the best. They last forever. You'll buy them one time. I think they're even the same price. The tactile nature of the wood, how it feels is gonna be the best. Also just doesn't, weigh 1,000 pounds and clang together like the wooden rings. So just get yourself a nice set of wood rings. And that is our Enthusiast. That's all of them, in fact. Again, just go to a place that you can get gear for whatever price point that you're at and follow a little bit of those guidelines. But all in all, you just need something that's gonna work, and doesn't really matter the price. Make sure that it feels good for you and get after it.